today we are going to start the second part of the course, which is called Towards a Communicative Syllabus. Now, in a normal teaching English class, we don't spend so much time talking about the syllabus. You also have other classes about curriculum planning, etc. So I don't want to necessarily be redundant with those classes, but I think personally, at least, that this aspect of setting the goals for your class is really the key, the first key of a communicative approach. So in the previous part, we saw multiple approaches to teaching, etc. I tried to explain the limitations of some of these teaching methods. I also told you that there was no perfect method. There is no miracle method that is always the best, or it's not a question necessarily of method. It's more a question of principles. But one of these principles is that, yeah, it is good to be communicative. It is good to focus on communication. Now, many teachers agree on that. Maybe all teachers agree on the fact that we have to train students for communication. But then when they set the goals for the class, they do not, oh, sorry, I forgot. I have to actually activate the live transcript. It will make it much easier for you to understand me. So can you see my, yeah, okay, now it works. Okay, just remind me to activate that in the future. So as I was saying, for many teachers, all teachers agree that communication is the objective, that all students, what they have to learn really with the language is to communicate in English. But when they actually plan their class, they forget about this objective and they plan their class for grammar. So even if you agree that communicative approach is the goal, many times the problem is that when you set your goals, you are going to set structure or grammar or vocabulary goals and not communicative goals. So I think that's the reason for this part, is that what you really have to understand, if you want to have a communicative class, if you want to train your students to become able to communicate in English, what you have to set yourself for is you have to set communicative goals. That's what we call a communicative syllabus. So I will talk a little bit about curriculum and syllabus today, and about functions and communicative goals, and I hope it will be easier for you to understand at the end. And then for the next few weeks, we are also going to work actively on creating a curriculum and then creating lesson plans for this curriculum. So creating a communicative curriculum. That's something you will be working on as your team, with your team. Now, so the first idea here is, so these functions and communicative goals, what can we say about this? Well, the first thing we have to understand is what is a syllabus, what is a curriculum? You maybe already know that. So what is the difference between syllabus and curriculum? What do you think? Can somebody answer that? If you're too shy, you can always write in the chat as well, but otherwise I would prefer somebody to talk. So what is the difference between a curriculum and a syllabus? Can I ask maybe Luis Chicaiza?
Prof.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think a syllabus is just the order of the topics that people is going to be taught, and curriculum, it includes the general terms about the area or the subject that you are teaching.
Okay, it's interesting. I'm not sure that's the most typical difference, but it might make sense. So to be very clear about this, curriculum and syllabus are many times used completely interchangeably. So many times people say syllabus or say curriculum and they mean the same thing. And both things are the planning or the setup of the ideas or the plan of a general course or program, which can be, but the typical difference between curriculum and syllabus is that usually a curriculum is at the program level and the syllabus is at the course level. So that's the typical difference. So a curriculum is usually not the planning for one course, but for multiple courses. For example, that's why we call the curriculum of the whole major, the whole English major, is a curriculum, because that's the curriculum of all the different courses and all the courses, how they sequence, what is the sequence between those courses, what are the main contents of the courses, etc. And then the syllabus is the specific planning for each course. So typically the curriculum is also designed by the institution or even by the government or imposed on the teacher. Usually the teacher does not select the curriculum, but the syllabus can be changed by the teacher. So personally, I cannot change the general contents of the different courses that you received in the English major, but I can change the specific contents that I will talk about in my own course within this curriculum, as long as I respect the general lines of the curriculum. So that's the difference between the curriculum and the syllabus. The curriculum is at institutional and program level. The syllabus is usually at the teacher and course level, okay? Even though, as I repeat, sometimes we use both interchangeably. Then below that, you have the third level, which is the lesson plan, which is at the level of one specific lesson, which can be 2 hours, 1 hour, 30 minutes, or even sometimes 1 week, okay? A lesson, there's no rule about how long a lesson has to be. If you can also think about your lesson as a whole week of teaching, but usually a lesson is 1 unit of teaching. So 1 hour if you teach 1 hour, 2 hours if you teach 2 hours, okay? So curriculum, syllabus, lesson plan. I hope that's pretty clear. Now, about the syllabus, I need to say something, which is you are used to the syllabus that you are presented for each of these courses in this university and in this major. But the syllabus, so when you look at the syllabus as the ones you are presented with at the beginning of each course, it tends to be extremely administrative, heavy, intense, not totally useful. Now, the syllabus should not be like that, ideally. A syllabus is really basically a planning for the course. And why is it done? What do you think is the reason for it to create a syllabus? There are multiple reasons. So what are the reasons to create a syllabus and to share it with the students?
In order to have a sequence, maybe.
Yes, it's important to have a sequence, yes.
And know what you are going to teach. You cannot go with, to a class and improvise. You have to know what you are going to teach and what is the main goal of that lesson.
Correct.
So you need that syllabus.
Exactly, yes. So that's the main, that's one of the reasons for the syllabus, and that's the reason mostly for the teacher side. The teacher needs to know what he will do in advance, not improvise. Yeah, correct. Second, but there are also other reasons for the syllabus, especially on the student side. Why do you think the teacher has to show what is the reason for the teacher to show the syllabus at the beginning of the course as it's being done here at the university? What do you think is the reason for that? Can I ask? Yeah.
No, the aims or the objectives.
Yeah, it's to share with the students the different guidelines and organization rules and principles of this course. So the problem is that when you look at the syllabus, the way they are organized at the university, sometimes it looks like there is a third reason, which is to please the university authorities or to please the government authorities on education, like maybe the CES wants us to create the syllabus and wants us to show you the syllabus, but that's not really the reason for a syllabus. The main reason for a syllabus is for me to know what I will do, and for you as students to know the main key ideas that you need to know about this course. For example, the evaluation principles. How are you going to be evaluated for this course? That's important for you to know. And it's important that I show you that at the beginning, but it doesn't have to be the same typical tables that you see in our syllabus. It can be much more simple. Actually, if you look, I recommend that at some point, if you look at any university program, for example, let's see, I have no idea if we are going to find something easy and quickly here, but yeah. If you go to any university, for example, Harvard, you can see the list of courses, that's the curriculum, okay? And then for each course, you have some information about this course on the university website. And you see that it's called the syllabus. Now let's look at the syllabus, and you will see that the structure of the syllabus is not at all the same as the one you are used to. It's actually usually, most of the time, it's much more flexible. So this is the syllabus for one anthropology course. Doesn't really matter the content of the course. You have some basic information about the dates, the format of the course, the fact that it's a seminar and not a lecture, the teacher name and its email, and her office hours. So at which time can you find her in her office to ask her questions, and then a description of the course, some description of the aims, of the objectives of the course, some list of materials, so list of readings, for example, or list of books, some evaluation principles, how they are going to be graded, and some expectations and policies. So for example, is attendance mandatory or is it optional? How is it, in this case, it's also via Zoom, and the fact that it's going to be recorded, accessibility, and so some details like that, and then a short planning. Okay, you see that the planning is not really extremely complex, just a topic for each class, and then some ideas about the skills assessments, the short assessments, and the midterm evaluation and the final project. Okay, you see 4 pages, not extremely structured, not extremely strict, not very difficult to understand or to fill in. So that's a syllabus for this course. So that's a university course. Of course, it's a little bit different when you're talking about other types of courses, especially language classes in secondary school. It's not necessarily, so it's the type of syllabus that I just showed you, that's the type of syllabus used in most universities in the world. But in a secondary school, it's slightly different. It doesn't have to be extremely detailed, and it's in a secondary school or in a primary school, it's much more important for the teacher than for the students. You are adults, and I can show you the program of the course, and you can already have an idea. But of course, for primary and secondary school students, it's probably less important to share with them all the information in advance, because, well, it's not the same relationship to the programming of the course. Now, so in any case, what you need to remember from this is that a syllabus is a comprehensive list of items or units, the things that you are going to teach. Doesn't have to be much more than that. It can be much more than that, but it has to be basically a list of units or items that you want to teach. It's usually, it has to be ordered. There is a sequence. And there are many ways to organize a syllabus. You can start with the easier things. You can start with the more important things. It's relatively flexible. And in terms of language teaching, well, there are reasons to start with some things before others. You remember we said that you are always going to teach the present before you teach the future or the past. You are always going to teach first the past simple before you teach the present perfect. You are always going to teach first the future before you teach maybe the conditional or very complex structures. In English, it's a little bit less problematic, but for example, if you were teaching Spanish, it's much easier to teach the future, first things like yo iré mañana, before you teach the conditional, things like yo iría mañana si podía. O si pudiera. Well, so that's the sequence, okay? There are reasons to teach first certain things in English before others. It has explicit objectives. It states explicitly what are the objectives of the course. And as we mentioned earlier, the reason also for a syllabus, it's a kind of public document. It's not only for the teacher. It's not only the notes of the teacher about what he's going to teach. It's also a public document, which matters for accountability. So accountability, it means that you have to be responsible of what you are going to teach, and people can check afterwards, okay, have you actually taught what you wanted to teach? Have you actually explained the contents that you had to teach? So it's important. That's the main reason also why syllabus and curriculums are also important for authorities. It's not only for the students, it's also that if the authority wants to know whether, or even if your next teacher, the following teacher next year wants to know, okay, what your students have seen, well, it's important for them to be able to access your syllabus so that they know, okay, oh, they have already seen the past simple, but now I can teach them the present perfect. And eventually it can contain things like time schedule, method or approach or materials, but that all these things are totally optional. It doesn't have to be like that. So in this case, for example, with me, I'm going to ask you to create a syllabus, a tentative or a hypothetical syllabus for a specific English class, but I'm not really interested in the time schedule because it's just hypothetical. You are not actually going to teach that, at least not immediately. So time schedule is not relevant. Materials and methods, in my case, I'm not really interested for you to write that down, for now at least, because that's not really what I'm interested in. What I'm interested in is the list of objectives, okay? Now, there is one big difference between synthetic syllabus and analytic syllabus. What is the difference? Is the way you conceive your course. Now, a synthetic syllabus is a syllabus that starts with the linguistic items, and then you go towards the phrases and the sentences. So you start with the grammar, the vocabulary, etc., with the idea that your students will then be able to combine these different linguistic items to create sentences, to create phrases, to create messages, to create utterances, and to express themselves in a communicative situation. Okay, that's a synthetic syllabus. That's when it's synthetic because you start with small pieces and you hope that your students will be able to put these pieces together to create bigger pieces, which are the sentences. Now, the second type of syllabus, which is the opposite type of syllabus, is the analytic syllabus. It goes from the other way around, and it says, okay, we are not going to teach first the grammar and the vocabulary. We are actually going to look at examples of communication, texts, dialogues, interactions. We are going to, or tasks. We are actually going to first focus on communication, tasks and functions, and then after that we are going to analyze these big communication moments to find the small items, the linguistic items, the structures and the vocabulary. You see that in both cases you always have a moment when you will look at the structures and at the vocabulary, at the grammar, etc. There is always one moment to look at that. And there is also always one moment to look at communication or creating sentences. But the order is different. Now, what do you think is the syllabus that we should use in a communicative approach? Is it a synthetic syllabus or an analytic syllabus?
Analytic one.
Correct. Yes. So clearly, if you want to be communicative, you need to go towards an analytic syllabus. Okay? Because the other way around, what we have seen is that it doesn't actually work like that. If you start with the structures, with the grammar, with the vocabulary, students are not necessarily going to be able to combine them to create sentences. Maybe sentences, but maybe not communication. Okay, so typically, traditionally, we saw a lot of synthetic syllabus, but actually what we really need are analytic syllabuses. Okay. Now let's look at different types of language syllabus. Okay, I'm just going to skim rapidly through it because you just need to understand the different types of syllabus. But what's really the most important one for now is the communicative syllabus. Now, different types of syllabus. The most classical, traditional type of syllabus is the structural syllabus. The structural syllabus is, of course, an analytic syllabus where you start with the grammar. So if you look at many different textbooks, English textbooks, for example, here you have an example from this. You know that in all textbooks, things like cutting edge. Let me show you cutting edge here. So this is cutting edge. You can see it, right? This is a textbook. If you look at the first pages, you see the contents, the table of contents. The table of contents is basically the syllabus of the course book because it tells you exactly what are the objectives for each unit. Now, if you look at the contents for many different syllabus, especially older textbooks, typically they put a lot of emphasis on grammar and vocabulary. So that's, if it's on grammar, if the main emphasis is on grammar, then it's a structural syllabus. You start with grammar. Or if it's a lexical syllabus, then you start with the vocabulary. Okay? A list of lexical items or a list of grammar vocabulary topics that you want to cover around headwords or around word families. Headwords is the words that you will find in the dictionary. So you know that in the dictionary, you will not find all the forms of a verb, of a word. You only find the head word. The word families is all the words is bigger than the vowel. I mean, it's small. It's even less items and bigger items than the head words. For example, if you say things like eat, well, you have all the word family with eat, which includes also no, it's not going to work well with eat, but maybe with name. If so, you have the word family for name. You can include surname, last name, first name, naming, to name, okay, etc., etc. So that's word family. That's a head word. That these are traditional syllabus. Okay, of course, lexical or grammatical syllabus or structural syllabus are really traditional and not really effective because they tend to lead you towards a very traditional teaching, a very grammar translation type of teaching. So it's still very frequent, sadly, but it's not really effective. I would not recommend that. Then you have also topic-based or situational syllabus, which are kind of classic as well in textbooks. You see a lot of textbooks which are organized around topics. Now, the fact that the textbook is organized around topics doesn't mean that it's strictly a topic-based syllabus. I will explain to you that. But especially if you look at old textbooks from the 80s or 90s, many of those were topic-based. So you had one unit at the station, one unit about on holiday or something like that, or going out. And in a sense, it's already better. But the problem is that many times these topic-based or situational syllabuses, they tend to become really focused on the vocabulary, and they tend to become a kind of lexical syllabus. You tend to focus a lot on the vocabulary and not always on the communication. So if you are at the station and then you focus on all the words that you need to know at the station, like train, ticket, booking, return ticket, a one-way ticket, etc. If you learn all the vocabulary, then you are going back to a lexical syllabus. Now, if you take the opportunity of this topic to look at all the communicative events that you can have in this topic, then it's much better and you are going towards a communicative syllabus. So what is really interesting is to go towards a communicative syllabus. You do not have to start with a topic for that. What really matters for a communicative syllabus are functions. So I will explain this to you in a moment, but the communicative syllabus, it's also called the functional notional syllabus. At least that was its original name. And that's one name that you will sometimes find. And the idea of functional notional is that because this syllabus is organized in terms of functions and notions. Now, notions, we're not going to talk about that because I don't really think it's useful. But functions are really important. Now, functions originally are basically the same thing as speech acts. So you know speech acts? Do you know the speech acts theory? It's something you might have seen in linguistics or in pragmatics. So in linguistics, in pragmatics, there is one thing called the speech acts theory created by Austin and Searle. Los actos de lenguaje, creo. Actos de habla. Not sure in Spanish how it is. So these speech acts are all the things that you do with the language. So for example, of course, one speech act is making a statement. When I say this book is black, okay, this is a statement. This is a piece of information, okay? But actually, if you look at what people do most of the times with language, they don't do only statements. They do many other things that cover many more other types of actions or functions. So things like requesting, can you pass me the book? And you look at in this sentence, can you pass me the book? If you analyze this sentence syntactically and grammatically, the literal meaning of the sentence is not pass me the book, is not giving an order or requesting, is asking you if you can pass me the book. But of course, if you are a normal human being, you are not going to answer to this question by saying, oh, yes, I can, but without doing anything. Because if you look at it linguistically, can you pass me the book, is asking you whether you have the ability to do that. And you can say, yeah, I have the ability to do that. I'm not going to do it, but I have the ability to do that. But no, that's not a real question. That's asking in a nice way. That's requesting the book in a nice way. So can you pass me the book? Oh yeah, here, there you are. So the function here is requesting. And then when the other person says, yeah, here, there you are, that's accepting the request and giving something to the other person, another function. And then there are even things that you only do with language. Things like promising. When you say, I promise you that tomorrow I will be there at 9. Now, promising, doing a promise is a real action that has influences on the world, but it's something that you only do with language. Or convincing, okay? Convincing a person, or thanking someone. Thanking, I should say. No, it's not. The subtitle is not correct, but you know, saying thanks. I should say. No, not saying things, saying thanks. Yeah, that's better. So saying thanks. Sorry, my th is not always perfect. Thanking someone or greeting someone, all these are actions that you only do with language. All these are functions. So greeting somebody, introducing yourself, asking for his name, all these are functions. And that's the focus of the communicative syllabus. So the key idea of this communicative syllabus, and when I say functions, I should say also that you can call these, and I will sometimes, most of the time I will actually call these not functions, but communicative goals. Let me just write this, see if it works. No, it's not working. So communicative goals, or communicative objectives, or communicative aims. Objectives, goals, aims, we're going to use those exactly with the same meaning. So communicative goals, functions, that's the center of the communicative syllabus. What is the key idea here is that if you want to organize your course in a communicative way, you have to plan your course around communicative objectives. That's the main goal here. You really have to organize your course. And that means two things. First, if you are using a textbook, so let me go back to this textbook here. So if you are using a textbook, you need to be able to see in your textbook if your textbook is already organized in terms of communicative objectives or not. And if it's not organized in terms of communicative objectives or communicative goals, then you have to maybe reorganize it and put the focus yourself. So for example, if you look at this one, this textbook, it's not really focused on communicative objectives. Actually, if you look at the first elements here, you look at grammar. All this is grammar. Okay, language focus, it's really organized as a structural syllabus. Then you have some things in terms of vocabulary, and then you have skills, you know, like reading and listening. Yeah, that's a little bit better. And then you also have tasks. That's interesting. But you don't really have here an organization in terms of communicative objectives. So maybe you should put that, reorganize the content of this textbook, even if you do not really change the activities themselves, but you plan them within a structure where your focus is actually not only on the grammar, but first on the communication. And the other case is that maybe in some situations you will not be using a specific textbook. So textbooks are not perfect, are never perfect. They have a lot of advantages. The main advantage is that when you are a beginning teacher, you do not have a lot of ideas of materials, texts, exercises to do, and the textbooks really help you to have all these contents. But when you are an expert teacher, then you can create your own set of material, and you do not really need the textbook anymore. So you can also plan your own course in your own way. And again, here, try to plan it in terms of communication goals. Okay? Any question until then? Is this clear? I hope it is.
Prof.
Yes, okay. One more thing I need to talk to you about in terms of syllabuses, and then we're going to take a break. But one more thing, so yeah, so the communicative approach is, the communicative syllabus is really the fact it really started and specific to the communicative approach. But one last thing is the task-based syllabus. So I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but just so you know, there are also some textbooks and courses organized not as functions or communications, but even going further as tasks. Now, the difference between the task-based syllabus and the communicative syllabus is not so big. Both focus on communication. both focus on kind of functions, but the task-based syllabus, it organizes the class not only in terms of the different functions you need to learn, but actually organizing concrete, precise tasks that will organize the whole learning process, rather than having theoretical, abstract communication goals. You really have concrete tasks to do with the students, and you start with production first. But that's something we will talk about more in the last part of our course, when we will look at task-based language teaching, which is great and really compatible with the communicative approach. But so you can actually also organize your class in terms of tasks. Okay, things like applying for a job. Applying for a job is not a specific function. Inside this task, inside applying for a job, you will do multiple types of functions. You will do things like calling to get information about how to send your curriculum vitae, or writing a curriculum vitae. That's another part of applying for a job, or writing a cover letter, so the letter that goes with the curriculum vitae, or introducing yourself in a company to say that you want to leave your curriculum vitae to the human resources manager or something. All these are functions that are part of this bigger task that is applying for a job. There are also some slightly different but quite connected syllabuses, like the genre-based syllabus. So what is a genre? Is simply a type of text. A genre is a type of text. So a CV, a curriculum vitae, is a type of text. A story, just one second. An article is another genre. A newspaper article, I mean, or a scientific article is another type of text. So all these are different genres. Okay, a genre is just a type of text. So it's the fact that you organize your syllabus not in terms of communication acts, but more in types of text, including oral text. So an interview is also a genre. It's an oral genre, is a speaking genre, but it's also a type of text. Okay. And you also can have a project-based syllabus, which is really similar to the task-based syllabus. So it's just that you put your task into a bigger project even that will combine multiple tasks. All this is possible. I'm just mentioning these as possibilities. But now, our focus for this part of the course will be to really see how we can organize a class and a course in terms first of communicative goals, and then how we can connect the different other aims, different subsidiary aims of the course to this main communicative goal. Okay, now let's take a break now, and then we will continue after the break. So let's take 5 minutes. Yeah, so just a note on objectives, standards, learning outcomes, and different words that you might find. First, the general idea is that objectives, learning outcomes, goals, aims, all these are the same. Okay, let's not overcomplicate things. In general, when you say learning outcomes, you have seen learning outcomes in Spanish as resultados de aprendizaje. Objectives, learning goals, learning aims, all these are really the same ideas. Do not overcomplicate things. Now, I do want to say two things. When you express your objectives, especially if you go towards communicative objectives and not content or knowledge objectives. So when you say things like, if you focus on vocabulary or grammar, then it's not really an action. It's usually a content. It's usually understanding or knowledge, your objective. When you say, I want to teach them the vocabulary of transportation, then typically what you are looking for is for them to learn or to know at the end the words related to transportation. So that's not really an active knowledge or a productive knowledge. That's more passive knowledge. And what really matters for you is really to focus on actions, things that they will be able to do with the language, if you want them to be able to communicate in the language. So if you want them to be able to communicate, you want them to focus on developing skills, but not necessarily the 4 skills, because those 4 skills, well, they are relevant, but not always precise enough to be able to plan. So I'm not going to talk in terms of planning for the 4 skills, because I don't think the 4 skills help us a lot with planning. They do help us when we are looking at the different activities that we do in class, but it's not enough to just say, oh, I'm going to improve their speaking ability, their writing ability, the listening ability. It's not communicative yet, because it's too general, too broad. But so what you do is you have to express your objectives in terms of as verbs. Okay, you have to express your objectives as verbs of actions, okay, that you want your students to be able to do. So a basic way to do that is just to say, oh, introducing yourself, or asking somebody his name. Okay, that's an objective. I want my students to learn how to express themselves, well, tell their name in English, tell their age in English, answer someone who asks for their name, or introducing themselves. Okay, all these are actions, are verbs. Now, one thing you will sometimes encounter are what we call can-do statements that are really close also to learning outcomes. Things like, the students can express likes and dislikes in familiar contexts. So these are also learning objectives. It's just a different way, slightly different way to write them. But usually another example is, can write to a hotel to ask about the availability of services. And the complete version would be something like, at the end of this course, students will be able to understand basic messages in English and to introduce themselves in simple, short sentences using essential words, etc., etc. You can continue if you want to put more details there. Now, all these expressions, they are also kind of learning objectives. The only difference is that they are expressed a little bit more like what you will be able to do really at the end of the whole process, especially if it's a very complex, like the third one here. This one is not the content, is not the objective for one lesson. It's too complex. Okay, it includes understanding messages, it includes introducing yourself in many different ways. So that's not possible to plan one lesson. This can be set as the general learning outcome or general learning objective of the whole course. Yes. But so it's really useful, this kind of things, at the curriculum level. Because that's really, you know, that at the end of this course, I want the students to have a certain level where they will be able to understand basic messages in English and introduce themselves, etc. That's my goal for the end of level 1. And then at the end of level 2, I want them to be able to write short texts in English about the past and the future, for example. But so those are especially useful for general curriculum level development. But when you want to focus on a specific lesson, and so the different items that will be inside the course, you need to go a little bit below that and be more specific. So those are already more specific. And again, those can-do statements are relatively similar to the idea of skills, to communicative skills, to abilities, to communicative goals, all this, okay? It's really close to the same idea. Okay, last thing, to summarize the different types of syllabus. We have the structural syllabus, where the unit are grammar elements or structural elements. An example would be future tense. Lexical syllabus, where each unit are lexical units, such as the vocabulary of food. Topic-based or situational syllabus, where you have different topics or situations, like at the restaurant. But then communicative or functional or skills-based syllabus, where the units are communicative goals, and examples would be booking a table, ordering something to eat. And lastly, task-based syllabus, where the units are tasks, and an example would be deciding and ordering in a restaurant for a vegetarian friend. So that's really the different types of syllabus. What really interests us in this course are these two. And for now, we will really focus on communicative syllabus, mainly because I want you to completely understand and manage and master the communicative goals before we get into tasks. All right? Now, to get this a little bit more concrete, what I would like you to do right now is I will give you the link toward the page I started creating. Yeah, just let me. Yeah, let me just stop.